We're live and now recording.
Great, can we have roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Antonio,
Here.
Mr. Badger,
Here.
Mr. Bleefeld,
Here.
Ms. Kiavachi. Here. Mr. Golson.
Here.
Ms. Karyonikis. Here. Dr. Morris.
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mrs. Ginsburg,
Here.
Gavin Lewis Richmond,
Here.
and Blake Zimmerman.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent, and 2 student board reps this evening.
Thanks, Katie. Will everybody please now join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everybody to our January 8th meeting. I hope everyone had a wonderful winter break. All right, looking at our agenda, we first list out our prior meetings. So on December 4th, we had our annual reorganization and work session. And on December 11th, we had our audit committee meeting, followed by our regular public board meeting. Upcoming meetings on January 16th, the Health, Wellness, and Safety Committee will meet, followed by the Racial Equity Oversight Committee. On January 22nd, we'll have a Facilities and Transportation Committee meeting. January 29th will be our next work session, and February 5th, our next regular public board meeting. All right, going on to presentations, our Wissahickon High School monthly highlights.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I wanted to get started with welcoming Mr. Brooks to the high school. He is our new assistant principal. He was a former ELA teacher and assistant principal at Central High School in Philadelphia. So we are very, very lucky to have him. And then we had a couple concerts. December is concert month at the high school. We had the winter choral concert, the band and strings concert, as well as jazz band's last concert for the season. And then our SEL theme was giving back, and that we very much did. We had Toys for Tots. I believe it was the junior class committee who held that. Also, Youth Activist Club held a book drive in which we collected books from different teachers and students, and we gave it to children, families, and schools in need. And then also some alumni gave back. We had alumni visit the Black Student Union, and they talked about the benefits of an HBCU education. If you don't know what that means, HBCU is a historically Black college or university. So that was really fun.
To add on to that, graduation for the class of 2024, the planning is underway on that. That's going to be Thursday, June 6th, which is crazy to think about. We're both graduating this year. But most seniors have already bought their caps and gowns, so it's crazy. Yeah, 6 months. Pen pals for freshmen at the high school. They actually met with their 4th grade pen pals at Bluebell Elementary School. So they actually, after a while of exchanging through notes and letters, they actually got to meet each other. So that was really cool. For sports, the wrestling team kicked off the year with a high of 35 wrestlers, which is great for the team. So good luck to them. Also, girls swimming team, they have won 10 out of the 12 events in their dual meet season so far. So congratulations to them. They're doing very well. And for boys and girls basketball, they've both had good seasons so far. And the one big event that we're all looking forward to is Silent Night, which actually started back in 2012 by the Fans Club. It is a tradition where we play Upper Dublin home at the Dome and the student section waits. We're silent until the 8th point. And then it's all crazy and stuff. And you wear a costume to that. So that's been a tradition. That's actually a lot of schools in the area have actually copied that. So we're really proud of that. We're trying to continue it. And the last thing I'll talk about, back in October, the Fans Club sold pink T-shirts for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so when we were deciding on where to give the profits to, we actually came across a story of an aide in the high school who actually was diagnosed with breast cancer. So we gave the profits to her right before we left for break. So it was really, really nice giving those the profits to her. So yeah.
That's wonderful. So many great things going on in our high school. So the 4th grade pen pals, is that with all the elementaries or is it just Bluebell?
I believe just Bluebell, but it may be through.
I would love to see that at all the elementaries. That's so cool.
It's a great idea.
And the book exchange, Gavin. So The books you collected, what organizations did they go to locally?
So the organization is called Reading Recycled. It's a Montgomery County based organization, and they kind of have like set locations that they found were like lacking certain books, or like they had shelters that they donated to. So they were all in the area.
I think that is so wonderful. It's something like our HSA we've done at Stony Creek is like book collections and redistribute them to people in need in the community, like different organizations that help children. So I think that is just awesome because I know like books can be expensive and that's just awesome. And Silent Night, when is that?
That is Friday, January 26th.
Okay, so if we come as a guest, you have to be quiet till the 8th point.
It's kind of like that. Yeah. But
Okay.
you don't have to, but that's what the students will be doing.
Okay. All right, well, those are my questions. Who else has comments or questions? Yeah, Joe?
Hey, guys, thanks for that update. A lot of great stuff going on at the high school. You mentioned FANS. Is that an acronym for something? Does it stand for anything? If so?
Yeah, it stands for Following Activities and Sports. So that's what it stands for. But it is like a fans club. But yeah.
But the most important question is, Blake, what costume are you going to be wearing?
That's a surprise that you will have to wait for. Stay tuned for this.
On Insta.
I hope you share pictures. Other comments? No? All right, well, thank you so much for that update. All right, board committee list. Is this something?
No, we got that.
Oh, what's under me? Oh, my goodness. Sorry, jumped down too far. North Monco Technical Career Center's National Technical Honor Society.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to welcome tonight Dr. Karen Haney, who's acting principal of Wissahickon High School, and she has some very important and impressive students to recognize. Dr. Haney.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I just would like to take this opportunity to recognize and honor the National Technical Honor Society inductees from Wissahickon High School as part of our North Montco Technical Career Center. The first one I'd like to speak about is JL Ansu. JL is a senior who's been participating in the Advertising Design PIAT program for the last 2 years. Her instructor, Mr. Rankin, shared that the artwork that she produces is astounding. Her senior project is based on concept art, and the amount of work she's doing for this long-term assignment is nothing short of amazing. He loves her use of color and her attention to mood. JL has set her sights on attending a 4-year college next year and has decided that she wants to pursue a path that will allow her to utilize her unbelievable creative abilities, and we are very proud of JL's successes. Evelyn Contreras is the second student to spotlight tonight. She's a junior in the Protective Services program at the North Montco Technical Career Center. She really enjoys working as a team with her peers in the program and has enjoyed learning CPR, handcuffing, and about helping trauma patients. Evelyn is hardworking and dedicated to helping others, which has made this program a perfect fit for her. Her experiences at the tech school have made her think about her future plans, and it has motivated her to get a degree in either criminal justice or forensics when she moves on to college. Ashley Contreras is a junior in the health science program at the tech school. As a second-year student, she's enjoyed working in the hands-on lab, getting the practical experience she will need to be able to work with patients. Topics that Ashley has really enjoyed learning about are the body organs and tissues. Ashley said that this program has confirmed her desire to pursue a nursing degree after high school, and she is excited about the opportunity to work in a hospital one day. Her kind and compassionate nature make her a great fit for this helping profession. Lindsay Craig is a junior in the Advertising Design PIAT program. Lindsay was eager to enroll in this program full-time after going part-time last year. Lindsay wanted to be able to channel her creative energy into projects that were meaningful to her, and this program gave her that opportunity. Her instructor, Mr. Rankin, shared that Lindsay has exhibited a wide understanding of art-making technology and has always shown the desire to grow and learn. As part of the full-time program, Lindsay is currently balancing work for the art studio in Lansdale, where she is learning how to make mosaics. Lindsay continues to be one of his strongest students. As a new student to Wissahickon High School in 10th grade, Sam Gallagher immediately applied and was accepted into the recreational power equipment cohort. After a year in the program, he did decide to switch to property maintenance and renovation, finding this cohort to be a better fit for his career needs. He is now being inducted into the National Honor Society at the Tech School and is an excellent student here, both at the high school and at the Tech School. We are proud of his participation and continued efforts at both schools and applaud his recognition. Jim Lucas, a dedicated student in the mechatronics program at the Tech School, has known he wants to be an engineer since he was young. His school counselor shares with admiration how Jim has consistently sought out the maximum rigor available to him in AP, honors, and tech school coursework. Jim is so worthy to be honored for his talent, passion, and work ethic at the Tech School. He has likewise been a great asset to the Wissahickon High School robotics team. He now sets his sights on engineering school at the college level. His experience at Tech and at Wissahickon High School have prepared him well for such an essential and ever-innovating field. Jennifer Mexcatitla Romera is an excellent individual inside and outside of the classroom. She's currently in her second year as a full-time student in the cosmetology program at North Monco Technical Career Center. As many freshmen are, Jenny was initially reserved in the classroom, but has since developed into a model student who has the ability to advocate for herself as well as build lasting relationships with staff and students. Jenny is planning to continue her education at Montgomery County Community College to study business. And finally, Suzanne McNaughton. Suzanne, please come on up to the podium. Suzanne is a joyful, creative, and prolific student in the advertising design program at the Tech School. She's always been driven, kind, and involved in her learning. We have great admiration for Suzanne's involvement in cross-country and art club at Wissahickon High School and the equally rigorous course load that this top-notch student has taken on with advanced placement and honors level courses. Suzanne's creativity and interest in an inclusive, hands-on learning environment created a perfect fit for the North Monco Technical Career Center and Wissahickon High School. Suzanne is heading into the second half of her junior year, ready to explore senior year and her post-secondary horizons. Congratulations, Suzanne.
Thank you for recognizing the National Technical Honor Society students. It really means a lot. The program I'm enrolled in is advertising design or commercial art. It prepares students for a job in the arts field, especially arts related to marketing and products. We learn the fundamentals of art, Adobe software, and basics of marketing, as well as career-related skills like writing a resume, cover letter, and creating a portfolio. It's been really valuable for me in preparing me for the job that I'd like to go into, and I really enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Katie, can we get a picture? Right, our next presentation is with Dr.
I
Duval.
had a quick
Oh,
question. And I'm not sure if maybe Karen, do you know exactly what mechatronics is? Maybe robots or something? Sure, yeah.
right, annual state, are there any other questions or comments? I'm sorry, before we like jump ahead.
I just want to say also, Suzanne, thanks for coming in person. Congratulations.
Just very. Very quickly, job well done. Congratulations on all your hard work and to you for your honor as well as the rest of your honorees. Congratulations.
All right, anyone else? All right, then Dr. Jawan.
Well, what an honor to follow such a presentation. Thank you. This evening, I'll be presenting the annual report of the district state assessment results. And the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide a high-level overview of our district state assessment results. And as a reminder, these results, the state assessments, as we move through the data, you'll see 2020 data are not represented because state assessments were canceled in that year. So you won't see any data reported for that year specifically, but we'll be taking a look, a historical review from at the 2023 results and looking back at a 5-year look back. Tonight's discussion will be walking through the topics that are listed here. And after reviewing the results and the data proficiency trends, I'll share some action steps that our team has taken, and then we'll open the floor for board questions and comments. So we'll start with walking through to provide some context and understanding of the state assessments in general. Under the Every Student Succeeds Act, all states must test students in reading and math once a year in grades 3 through 8, as well as in high school. And they must also test students in science at the elementary level, the middle level, and the high school. So we'll see the grades that are represented in our data are sort of outlined here, looking across those various subject areas of English language arts, math, and science. A note about the Keystone high school exams, scores for students in Algebra 1, Literature, and Biology, those scores are banked for students and reported in grade 11. So a student might have taken Algebra 1 in grade 7, 8, or 9th grade, and their scores are then held and banked and reported for them when they are in the grade 11 cohort, once they're in grade 11. For literature, our students are assessed in grade 10 at the conclusion of the literature course in grade 10, and their scores are banked for when they're in grade 11. And then for biology, students take the biology assessment in grade 9, and those scores are banked for when they're in grade 11. So that's an important context in terms of understanding those Keystone exams. Okay. Again, I mentioned that the assessments were canceled in 2020. Something else to mention about the 2020 assessments, there was a Keystone waiver for students who met those 2 conditions that are outlined here. And that was if they were first-time test takers in 2020, and if they had earned a passing grade in the course, in that Keystone course. So there was a waiver for students in that. So that'll come up when we look at specifically our algebra scores this year, because Algebra 1 students who are reported for 2023 who were in grade 11, there are groups of students who, as I mentioned, would have taken the assessment in either of those grades, but there are students who would have been eligible for the waiver. So the group of students, the total number of students in those assessment scores are not representative of a typical group of students. So again, just providing some context here. As we look through the following slides, you'll see we'll show proficiency levels and proficiency trends for the PSSA and the Keystone exams by subject area. We're also going to present demographic, scores for our demographic peer group, who's outlined here, as well as the comparison to the average of all PA schools. So that's another proficiency line that you'll see on that on the data as we walk through. Just a note, I mentioned this last year, and I'll mention it again, and I'll probably continue to mention it forever. And that is that the Pennsylvania Department of Education continues to caution districts against using state assessment data to compare across districts. So they just remind us to be cautious of interpreting the comparison across districts. So I want to just mention that here. And yet we will be taking a look at the comparisons as we move through, as I mentioned. So we'll start with English language arts, and here we're looking at reading and writing standards. So this is the data for our students in grades 3 through 5. And so I'll spend a little more time on this slide just to get us acclimated to how the data are being presented. This slide, of course, shows the percentage of students in grades 3 through 5 who score proficient or advanced on the English language arts PSSA. And again, you'll notice 2020 is not represented here because of the cancellation of assessments. At the gray line at the bottom is representing all of the Pennsylvania school districts, an average of all the schools across the state of Pennsylvania. The orange line in the middle is representing the average of our demographic peer group. And then the blue line at the top is Wissahickon School District. And so when we're looking at this side, we can see our students in grades 3 through 5 are at, have met 80.5% of our students in grades 3 through 5 that proficient or advanced on the PSSAs in English language arts. So as I move through each slide, I won't outline all of that because now you're acclimated to it. We'll take a look at what our results are across each of the grade levels and across each of the subject areas. And so here we see our students in grades 6 through 8, approximately 79% of students scored proficient or advanced on the ELA PSSA. And then as we look at the Keystone proficiency, we can see approximately 87% of our students in 2023 met with proficient or advanced. And as I mentioned at the end of the presentation, I'll walk through a little bit more about context, but more importantly, I'll talk about those action steps that our team is taking or has taken. And so we'll take a look at math. And when we look at our PSSA scores for students in grades 3 through 5, we see our students an increase here where our students are 80%, approximately 80% proficient or advanced in math. And then at the middle school, we do see a dip, showing approximately 57% of students being proficient in advanced. And while this dip is seen across our demographic peers and across the state, I will share, again, I'll share some action steps that our team has taken when we take a look at math, specifically at the middle school level. When we look at the Algebra 1 Keystone exam, now, those of you who were here last year, think back to last year's presentation, and we saw that spike, and I said, but let's interpret that with caution, because that was a subset of students that did not represent our full body of students in that would be in our Algebra 1 Keystone. And I believe I even cautioned and said we'll likely see a dip the following year because of the waiver, because of the structure of our Keystone data being collected and banked for students. And so while we needed to take a look at that 97%, while very exciting, we had to interpret it with caution because it was not representative of our full group of students. And the same goes for the approximately 60% of students being proficient now in our Keystone Algebra 1 pool of students. So again, I'm going to talk more about action steps later, but I just wanted to pause and remind us of that caution.
Yeah, just to comment on that, I remember last year at this time last year when we were looking at the results and having like 97% proficiency in Keystone Algebra was like, dramatically high and really good. The dynamic that Munyewe is talking about is that because of the waiver that happened in 2020 in the COVID year and Keystones being canceled, is that for this class of 2022, the only ones that would have had algebra scores that were banked were students who took the algebra Keystone in either 7th or 8th grade. So, and they banked it, right? So by the time you get to 11th grade, the only ones who took it were the ones who took it in 7th and 8th grade. The only kids who are taking 7th and 8th grade algebra Keystone are the ones who are advanced in math, either a year or 2 full years ahead of their normal track. So those are the only kids who took the Keystone and had Keystone scores banked. So that's what we're talking about. They're artificially inflated because all the kids who are just taking algebra in normal 9th grade timeframe, none of them had any Keystone scores banked. So by the time they became 11th graders in 2022, there's no test. So we only had kids who were advanced either a year or 2 full years ahead of the curve with Keystone scores. And then this is the flip side now, where we have I think we only have kids who took the Keystone exam after, I guess took it late, maybe, or like after like either 9th grade or later.
Right. So
kids who are on, I guess, the normal cycle for taking algebra or taking it late. And so then it's a different cohort of kids. So neither is representative of the whole. And it's almost like kind of the high flyers on one end, and then this year we're having some of the folks who took the algebra keystone later than normal. So it's kind of goes to the opposite end of the spectrum. Next year, we should have a return to more normal, right? Because then there's more scores that, I guess this phenomenon is less of an impact.
The waiver will affect our data through spring of 2024. So this year's group of 11th grade cohort. This should be the last year of students. So when we're looking next year at the data from spring of 2024, we'll still see the impact of the waiver. And then we would hope for sure to see more representative of our student body.
Yeah, and one thing, another comment I'll make is that the orange line that's in all these graphs is, the demographic like peer group. So we started doing this when I first joined on the board about 8 years or so ago, because prior to that, there was a tendency to look at how Wissahickon was doing relative to the state average. And you could see we're clearly above and beyond the state averages, but as a district, we have certain advantages over the average in the state, right? So it's not really a fair comparison group. And this is part of what PD talks about. When you look at PSSA results or Keystone results across districts, it could be misleading because some of these results are also highly correlated with socioeconomic status of the student population, as well as the resources and funding of the school district itself. So if you're looking at one District A and District B, and they have very different socioeconomics, very different school funding levels, you're going to see that's a driver of a lot of differences between districts. So, but the demographic peer group in the schools that you saw there listed, Colonial, North Penn, Upper Dublin, these are schools that are generally demographically similar to us. Student demographic, socioeconomic status, funding levels. So this is a more fair comparison, or if you're looking at their PSSA and Keystone versus ours, because they're more like peers to us statistically, right? So although, yes, you have to apply some caution because no district is exactly alike, the group in our demographic peer group is somewhat similar to us. And I think it's fair to have them as a comparison point. And then if you look at all the graphs that we've seen, the curve is somewhat similar across our peer groups, but it's consistently above. So that's, to me, a positive as well.
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll take a look at science next. When we are looking at science, our fourth grade science PSSA, we see an increase to approximately 95% proficiency. And as we move through to the middle school, we see our 8th grade PSSA science results have an increase to approximately 81% proficiency. When we take a look at the Keystone biology exam, we do see a slight recovery from what was a significant dip in 2022 scores. And again, when I get to action plan conversation, I'll share some things that our team has sort of explored in looking at the data, as well as action steps that we plan to take. I just want to briefly mention the PA Future Ready Index is a website which has resources for district leaders, school leaders, teachers, families to get more information about not just state assessment measures, but also other measures of accountability in districts. So I always want to mention this here. And then I want to take a moment to talk about assessments in general. We know assessments play a critical role in the teaching and learning process. On our district's website, we have an assessments page that's linked here, and this PowerPoint will be accessible in Word docs later this week. And on that page, we share an explanation of the various types of assessments and how teachers use information from these assessments to more efficiently focus their instruction to benefit student learning and student achievement. And as we look at the use of data, there are multiple layers to the use of data in any district. Our teachers use assessment data to reflect on their own instructional practices, as well as identifying student strengths and areas of need in terms of planning instruction and interventions in their classrooms. School administrators use data to set school or grade level goals, to plan for school-based professional learning opportunities for staff, and to identify student support needs in their building. And then district leaders, we use assessment data to inform continuous improvement of our efforts throughout our district. And that can include, but is not limited to, the curriculum review process, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. We use the data to identify focus areas for professional learning opportunities and to deploy our instructional coaches to provide support to teachers, as well as our role in supporting school leaders in understanding and using assessment data with their school teams. So these are just some ways to note in terms of when we talk about the use of assessment data. While here, we're having a very high-level overview, we'll have a brief conversation about the data. This is not the extent of the data conversations in our schools. I'm lifting that up to make that very clear that data conversations happen in our buildings all the time. And perhaps our audience might nod in agreement. We have some of our teachers here this evening, and I'm sure they would attest to that. And so I'll spend more time here on this action steps slide. Throughout our the presentation this evening, we certainly saw some areas of success that should be celebrated. We also saw some areas that require attention for improvements in our data for certain. Many, as you notice, and Mr. Antonio mentioned, many of those, what I'll call peaks and valleys in how the data trends were presented, are generally aligned with our demographic peers and state averages. And as Mr. Antonio noted, are actually, Wissahickon is above those trend lines. However, we do want to focus on what are the action steps, because there are action steps that are to be taken to make sure that we're addressing those areas of need within our school district and the Wissahickon School District here. So one thing I want to mention is K-12, we're continuing to work on enhancing the multi-tiered systems of support, which is a framework for using data to design differentiated core instruction, as well as support students who have more intensive needs. We're working with school teams to employ the use of a scientifically based approach for data-based decision-making called Team-Initiated Problem Solving, or TIPS protocol. And that protocol is used to provide guidance to school-based data teams to help them in first running effective data meetings, but also knowing how to use data to identify school needs, department needs, grade level needs, and set goals around those needs, and to plan effectively for solutions for addressing those needs within those bands that they identify. And it is a continual process, an iterative process, where there's constantly monitoring and revisiting and revising those solutions, and ensuring that we have those procedures in place is very important. When we look at the middle school data, one of the action steps that I want to lift up is the work that our team is doing to provide and work with our math specialist at the middle school, who's providing support to students as well as teachers. So helping to use some of those data protocols in that process. We did have a change to our middle school schedule that includes more time for instruction for math support. We also are in the process of the math curriculum review process, and that's helping us look at the alignment of math concepts across K-12 to ensure that the scope of math topics from elementary to middle, as well as middle to high school, doesn't include any curriculum gaps. We're doing the same thing with the science curriculum this year, where we're looking and ensuring that there are no curriculum gaps. One of the things that our team noticed in the curriculum review process for science is students have life science topics in 7th grade, and then they have the biology exam in 9th grade. But in 8th grade, the life science topics is not a focus of 8th grade science. And so that's an example of the curriculum review process, taking a look at where are those curriculum gaps and how do we address those gaps in revising the curriculum moving forward. There are new science standards that are to be implemented in all districts in 2025, 2026. So our team is already using those science standards and the work of the curriculum review process. So that's just an example of looking for the vertical alignment in our standards, which is really important. And when we see the gaps, first of all, we have to look for the gaps, and that's what our teams do. When we find those gaps, we look at how do we ensure that we close the gaps in curriculum content, specifically in terms of instruction for students. And the curriculum review team does an exceptional job of doing just that. At the high school and middle school this year, teachers are implementing the new ELA, well, K-12, implementing the new ELA curriculum. ELA is English Language Arts. And there's been professional development time for the ELA department at the middle school and high school that's been dedicated to implementing planning within and across the middle school grade levels and high school grade levels. Professional development in math for middle and high school teachers this year has also centered on data analysis, differentiated instruction to meet the needs of all learners, critical thinking and math discourse and problem solving. And our math instructional coach has been providing follow-up coaching support to teachers at the middle school and high school who are working on taking a look at their data and planning for small group instruction for students at the middle and high school level. One thing to note, just again, in terms of providing some context for the board here, in the past, in terms of specifically, now I'm going to speak about the Keystone exams. In the past, when students did not pass the Keystone exams with a score of proficient or higher, they were, and this is years ago, they were placed in remediation courses and they were required to retake the exam. However, due to the new graduation pathways, Act 158 out of the Pennsylvania Department of Education, we no longer have the ability to require participation in remediation courses, and we cannot require students to retake the exam if they don't have a score of proficiency, because students have other pathways that they can take to fulfill the graduation pathways requirement. So I'll just give you one example of that. And again, this is just for context in terms of taking a look at those Keystone exam scores. Students can choose from 5 pathways, one of which includes, of course, obtaining proficiency on all 3 of the Keystone exams, which is what we would hope all of our students can and would do. Another pathway is called the Keystone Composite Score pathway. And with this pathway, as long as their composite score of all 3 exams meets the cutoff for the composite score, those students would only be required to have a proficiency score in one of the Keystone exams, and they could carry a score of basic in the 1 or 2 other Keystone exams. So again, this is just providing some context for what we're seeing with our Keystone scores, and our high school team is noticing that as a result of the options for the graduation pathway, students are opting not to retake the exam, whereas in the past they'd retake and then, get the support, retake, and get a score proficiency. And so we would be expecting to see those scores rebound. That said, that is what it is, right? And that is what it is. It's something that, we can continue to encourage our students, but we have to focus on how do we increase our support to students so that the first time they take the Keystone exam, that they pass with a score of proficiency. And that's why we focus our attention on looking at the curriculum, ensuring that there are no gaps in the curriculum, providing support to teachers as they're working on learning, looking at their data and making decisions around interventions and instruction in their classrooms, as well as other support systems that are in the schools. That's where we have to focus our attention, and pouring time into professional development to support our teachers as they're doing the good work that they're doing, as well as deploying our coaching support, as I mentioned earlier. And then again, with the vertical articulation of standards. So that's where we're focusing our attention, because those are the things that we can control. The fact that students have those alternate pathways is what it is. We certainly will continue to encourage them to retake, and we'll schedule them to retake. But when they opt out or they don't show, that's we have to focus on what we can control. And so we're going to continue to do that good work. And special thanks to our administrators and our teachers and our support staff who do that good work every day. So at this point, I'll take questions from the board.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Dr. Dwan. So the last part you mentioned about retaking the exam, if they do retake it, when does that get reflected in the numbers? Like, will we see it bumped up historically on that chart, or will it be reflected in the next year's numbers?
Because the scores are banked for grade 11, they would retake it before their grade 11, right? Before those scores are reported. And so what would be reported would be the final score of whether if they retook it and became proficient, that would be reported.
And I actually wanted to ask, like, what is the point of banking? Like, what do they have? It sounds like you can retake it, so maybe you have some extra time built in then. But is there like a real reason behind banking? It just makes it so confusing that you're looking at scores from years ago rather than your current numbers.
Yeah, I am careful not to pretend to know why the state does what they do. That said, so I just want to put that out there. So one of the reasons why they might have a model where they're banking as they do is because scores are, assessments are taken at various points. This is one way to consistently track and monitor a district in terms of accountability under ESSA. For our PSSAs, it's not a problem. They're taken in the various grade levels, but it's the same across districts. with regard to Algebra 1, students can take it in grade 7, whenever they take Algebra 1. So that would be difficult, I think, for the state to track and compare, though, you know, they caution us against comparing. Certainly there is sort of that comparison to ensure that we're meeting for accountability measures across a state. The same thing for literature. Not all districts assess in grade 10. We assess in grade 10 based on what we know of our curriculum and the scope and sequence of literature content to best prepare students for the Keystone exam. And the same thing for grade 9 biology. So I think that's a way that the state can, with consistency, look at data across districts. So that's my best effort at giving a response on behalf of PDE.
Well, from a practical standpoint, if you took biology in 9th grade and then took the Keystone exam for biology in 11th grade, you might not remember 9th grade biology as much. So
No, yeah,
so
It has
the
to be at
part
the
of it is
end
also
of the
taking it
course.
upon the completion of the course when you took it in school. So it's like, it's relatively fresh in your head, right? So I mean, I think that's part of the rationale behind banking.
Well, yeah, and that makes sense, but I'm just wondering then why they wouldn't just report it out in the same year that it's done, taken, rather than waiting 2 whole years when you're in 11th grade, why they don't just report it out that same year. But what you said makes sense.
Thank you.
So I'll go with
The
it.
Keystone exams are also considered like an exit requirement. So it's like to exit or to graduate, you have to have passed these exams, right? And so reporting them later also just gives them more, you know, students more time, their school districts more time for them to take the Keystone and actually pass the Keystone. That's part of it too.
That's true, yeah. And then as far as the biology scores for 8th grade, like, do we get any sort of, like, I'm assuming we do, like detailed data as to like what specific topic areas our students did not perform as well in, so that we know like what areas we maybe need to focus more on? Like, I'm trying to think when I get my kids' scores, I don't remember if it tells me like specific things they did well in, just, or if it's just like, you know, this is what you got in math and ELA. But do we get any sort of indication on our end?
Yes, our schools and district does, in terms of being able to drill down into the data, to look at the specific standards, to look at specific subgroups of students. Yes, and that those data conversations happen at the building level so that they can use that information to almost backwards plan and look at the next cohort of students and use that information as a part of the curriculum review process and identifying where those gaps may be. So yes, and those are data conversations that happen at the building level and at the district level with our curriculum review process. Yeah.
And do we get that information based on even individual students? Like the teachers can identify like individual students that perhaps did not
Yes.
perform well?
Yes.
Okay, great. And it sounds like you did identify like life sciences being taught like a whole 2 years almost before you take the test. Is there anything else we've identified as to what could be causing, you know, biology to be at I have 65.7?
The science curriculum is literally happening this year, that curriculum review process for science as well as math. And part of that process is looking at the data and drilling down into data. So that process of drilling down into the data happens at the building level with departments, with building level data teams. And it does include taking a look at specific students and subgroups of students and looking at the standards, but it's also very beneficial for the curriculum review process. I don't have with me a complete and comprehensive list of all of the specific areas that they've identified, because I didn't anticipate that being a part of our conversation this evening. I just wanted to offer that as one of the examples, but the teams are working hard and looking and exploring to identify what are the gaps and how to ensure in that curriculum review process we're closing those curriculum gaps and making sure that we're not having that type of sort of misalignment.
And our teachers did not. So the teachers are part of that conversation, right? Like they see what goes on in the classroom. Like they're part of that conversation and figuring out what we need to do to get our students.
They make up the curriculum review team. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of that process, it includes our teachers and administration as well. And it's spearheaded by our Department of Teaching and Learning with Dr. Schmidt and Mrs. Konopka. But the teachers are the ones, because they're the ones who know. And so their voices matter tremendously. And what they are noticing in their students and in their cohorts of students matter. And so absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions? Comments? Yeah, Stephanie?
Thank you so much for this presentation. And a lot of that context was very helpful for me. So thank you for that. I have a few data questions. So in your slide where you showcase the demographic peer group, you list Wissahickon along with the other schools. So are you averaging us into that average? Okay,
No, great
Thank-
question. Thank you. No,
Yeah.
it's
Okay,
just the group of 5.
Okay.
Excellent
makes-
question. Thank
Makes
you.
total sense. And then it was really helpful to explain that algebra kind of dip. That was, thank you, Steve. So we share a break. It was very, very helpful. But do we? Okay, here we go. Do we have the data? And I know you won't have it right now, but it would be maybe helpful if we saw how many students actually took the test versus opted out by that year, so we could actually see if the sample size is actually driving some of that data, showing up in that way. So that would be kind of a nice to know. I'm a data person, so like I would love to see the mins and max and all those things, but I know you can't do that. But what year did we change the requirement or the proficiency exemption in the data? That would be also really good to see, because that might explain some of this data changes that we're seeing here.
Okay. Can I just echo
I
back?
gave you a lot of things here.
No, thank you. I just want to echo back the last question in terms of the what year question. Could you restate that question?
So
What year did
You
we?
stated that at some point we were not,
Oh,
I'm paraphrasing, we were not requiring
Yes,
students
okay.
to
retake the Keystone.
retake.
Yes, okay, thank you for clarifying.
So if we can show when that
Yeah.
occurred, that might also help explain why we're seeing some of this data changes.
Yeah. This group of 2023.
You don't have
Would
to
be the-
answer it right now.
Yeah, I want to say,
because I
it's-
think
I can
that's
tell
also
you that
gonna
Act
impact.
158 graduation, pathways for graduation, were implemented the 2022 school year. But I want to make sure I'm thinking this through and
Yeah.
collecting my notes to make sure that I'm able to say with confidence which cohort of students that impacted, because I believe it impacted, the first cohort of students would have been 2023 data that we're seeing collected. Because the pathways implementation would have been the 22-23 school year. Now I'm going to say with confidence, yes, because the Pathways Act 158 pathways were to be implemented the 22-23 school year. And so the first cohort of students would be our 2023 data that we're seeing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
But I'll make sure I triple check and I'll follow up with the board.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
Dr. Dewan, thank you very much for the presentation. And also thank you to the teachers. I mean, other than a few blips, the data is very impressive.
Yes.
The teachers and students. In most cases, the trend lines for both the peer group and the full state follow with our trend line, right? So is there analysis on the state level of the test itself that says maybe we screwed up on the questions a couple of times or anything like that?
Am I understanding your question to be, does the state ever acknowledge mistakes? Is that? I mean, respectfully, so. No. There are times when the state does share insight around some of the testing items that they'll notice patterns across the state. I know that there was a recent conversation around an item in, I don't remember what subject area, I think it was 8th grade in terms of the grade level. But that was a recent conversation I had with Dr. Schmidt, actually, where the state was sort of sharing out and exploring and taking a look at what they had noticed with that item. That might be as good as it gets. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But there are definitely conversations that happen across the county and across the state around the testing items. And there are conversations around, with our colleagues, with our Job-alike colleagues, what did you notice in terms of their assessment results as well? So it's always an ongoing conversation because it matters. Yeah, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I just had a quick question. There's two scores, the 6 to 8 ELA and the 6 to 8 math. Neither of those are banked nor a part of the alternative pathways for graduation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So they're concerning to me. I guess I'm wondering, like, has the test changed? Has our curriculum changed? What do you mostly attribute the drop to be? And I guess my follow-up question would be, I think one of the things you had said for supports is small group instruction in reading and math. How will we accomplish that?
How will we accomplish small group instruction and reading?
Yeah,
and
like, do
math?
we probably need more of it? Is that what you were inferring with small group instruction in reading and math?
When we take a look at our instructional practices, one of the instructional practices that we know in terms of a strategy for supporting students is small group instruction. And so working with teachers to know how to do that in a whole group setting within the core classroom is something that's important that we continue to have conversations around. And with regard to our, specifically at the middle school, with our reading specialists there and our math coach, math specialist that's there, I know Dr. Schmidt has been working with the middle school administrative team as well as those specialists to take a look at how are they supporting teachers and how can we best support teachers, and taking a look at that data and using that to drive decisions around those classroom instructional practices, which includes small group instruction. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just, I'm just not sure why it changed so much. And I guess my concern is, like, you know, we've talked a lot about a growing special education population or just more need for support. And so I guess I just want to make sure that we have the specialists we need at the middle school to be supporting these students appropriately.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Any other comments or questions? Great, thank you so much again for that presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, we'll now move on to our first public comment period. As a reminder, we allow a maximum of 5 speakers on any particular topic. I shouldn't say any particular topic, agenda topics. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Katie, we still have the buzzer, right? So we do have, if you don't recall from our last meeting, we do have a buzzer that will go off and let us know when your 3 minutes are up. Note that it's not our practice to engage in dialogue with speakers, and when appropriate, we'll post responses on board docs. So when you approach, please state your name, your municipality of residence, or relationship to the district, and what you're going to be speaking on. So we have one person registered for the first period. JJ? Oh, TJ, my goodness.
Good evening. My name is TJ Carousel, and I'm the co-president of the Sick and Education Alliance, the union that represents the teachers and support staff professionals. I'm here this evening to share with the board concerns regarding later start times. We surveyed our membership after the district published the proposed changes to the staff workday. My comments tonight reflect how staff feel about a possible change and express how a possible change to a start and end time will impact them and their families. 335 members took the survey. 86% oppose the change, 7% support the change, and 7% did not have an opinion. I'd like to highlight some specific concerns. Members responded that the change would complicate both elder care and child care. Changing child care arrangements often is complicated by wait lists, hours of operation, and locations. Changes to elder care arrangements are complicated by wait lists as well as insurance and Medicare approvals. As school employees, we have a finite number of sick days, do not have midday flexibility to attend medical appointments. A common workaround is to try to schedule the last appointment of the day. The change in end time and start time would make it more difficult to make those appointments and make them on time. Members expressed concern about shifting their commute into rush hour. Nearly 20% indicated that a shift in start time and end time would extend their commute more than 20 minutes each way or increase it 40 minutes per day. Staff that depend on a second job to supplement their WSD income were concerned that a change would prevent them from keeping their job. What are some potential impacts of the change? 37% of the respondents said that the change would cause them to look for employment in another district. This change would make it difficult for some staff to continue coaching a sport or sponsoring a club activity. 40% of the respondents indicated that they would consider leaving a coaching position or club sponsorship within the district. Members also stated that the proposed changes would make it more difficult to coach or volunteer in their home communities. At the elementary level, elementary teachers stated that students often run out of stamina by the end of the current school day, and they're concerned about students getting home in the dark. Secondary teachers expressed concerns about student athletes missing even more instructional time, possibly up to 2 class periods for games. In conclusion, thank you for your time this evening and your service to the school community. I appreciate being able to share the staff concerns with you tonight, and I respectfully ask that you consider their feedback as you make your decision on this issue.
Thank you for those comments, CJ. And I did want to thank you for all the work you guys did in gathering that data to present to the ERC and present this evening. So thank you so much. Anyone online? No? All right. Then we will move on. Under the board president report, we do list out our membership list, which has all of our email addresses as well as the year when we will be up for re-election. We also included our board committee list. Not too many changes from prior year, but we do have some new members on our committees. So you can take a look at those changes in board docs. And now we're going to have a discussion about later school start and end times. So I did want to start this off by just kind of sharing out, last January, we came here as a board to vote. And at that time, we did not really feel like we were prepared. There was a lot of questions we still had unanswered. Things like, how is it going to work with North Monco? How is it going to work with athletics? And we really felt there were questions not answered. So we delayed our vote a year, and we're going to be voting in February. And during that time, our administration has worked to gather information. We've had a series of presentations. We've collected a lot of data from our teachers and staff. We also have information from our community, and all of us have been getting emails, and we've all been getting the list of submissions from our community. So tonight, I did want to kind of go through those. I know we have almost 300, so I'm not going to sit here and read all of them like we did during COVID when we read all the comments at one meeting. But, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I actually have a prepared comment. Would you mind if I made that first? Would that be okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Just about this topic?
Sure.
All right. So bear with me. There's a couple points. First, TJ and WA, thanks for being here. And thank you for sharing openly the data you collected. I appreciate that. I have read every comment, as Amy referenced, that has come through. And I want to address just a couple of things. And this is just important to me to address. This initiative was about doing something positive for our kids. As Radnor's school board president said, there's not a singular thing we can do as a school to have such a positive impact for all of our kids. And I truly believe that. Number two, we didn't ignore the survey. We saw it. The issue with collecting data is that we didn't have a plan. To really be able to say if you're for or against something, you need to know what it is you're for or against. Number three, the order of things that we did with this initiative were not right. And I take some of the blame for that. What I didn't understand coming into this, because I sort of joined the board midway through this process, is that we really had a lack of buy-in from the community before putting out the initial survey. Number four, we're still talking about this because we wanted to see if this was something our community could do. And I thought it was important to see that through. This board is not trying to parent your child. For me, this is truly about setting our kids up for success. We know so much more now than we did 25 years ago when I was in high school. And for me, when you know better, you do better. We know now how incredibly important sleep is for every aspect of life, especially for teenagers. And number six, rest assured, the admin and board are doing other things. You've just heard a lot more about this because it was such an important topic. And lastly, as many of you know, I was very much in favor of this because when I vote for something, I always vote in the way that I feel is in the best interest of the kids. Truly, that is my motivation. However, sometimes the best match what's in the best interest of kids does not match reality, what can be our reality. Some of the solutions to issues were not acceptable for various reasons, and I think the community has pretty clearly spoken in the feedback that this is not something we're willing to do right now. I will very sadly say that, in my opinion, we just need to shut it down. I don't think we need to vote in February. I think we probably just need to move on. I just don't see a path forward with this anymore. Thank you.
All right, thanks for those remarks, Dan. All right, I did want to go through the feedback from the community, to let the community know we have heard them. And again, I'm not going to go through every single comment. And a lot of this is personal information from members of our community and I don't want to share out names or personal situations, but general themes. There were a lot more people that were not in favor based on their comments. A lot of the comments dealt with activities after school. And we've heard that over and over again, that there's a lot of after school clubs, sports that would be affected by this. And a lot of people raise questions that, still they don't know exactly how that would look for their student. And they feel there'll be lost academic time, having to push things back and having to still start sports or activities at the same time. So there was some concern about lost academic time. A lot of families expressed concern about loss in family time in the evening. Not being able to possibly have family dinner because things are being pushed back, or just spending time generally with their children. So that was a concern. Homework, when students are going to get this done, if we're not going to be addressing the issue of homework. When are students going to get that done if we are pushing, the school start time back? And I know we've heard that from our student reps, some concern about homework. So that is a concern that was raised a few times. A work schedule, again, was one raised a number of times. Parents not really understanding how this is going to affect their work schedule, that they may need to change hours, or they may not be able to get to work on time, especially with the elementary students if we push their time back as well. Childcare, in line with that as well, parents were concerned about childcare and whether or not they would need to now also use morning care in addition to the aftercare. Traffic was raised a few times about, have we explored this? Have we looked at whether or not this is going to affect traffic patterns in certain areas, whether we've talked to local businesses to really find out how this will affect, commutes and just traffic in general. Buses, there were concerns about busing in the afternoon for our elementary age students and having them get on the out of the bus in the dark. On the other side of that, we did have parents who expressed that they were in favor of it because their students are out in the dark in the morning, waiting for the middle school, high school bus. Let's see. The cost did come up. I know in one of the options that we've presented that the cost is far more significant. So there were some concerns from members of our community about the cost associated with this. And there are a lot of elementary concerns. A lot of people express concern about our elementary students and whether or not this was the best choice for them, pushing them back as well, because they are more alert in the morning, but in the afternoon, they seem to be a little bit more tired. And whether or not if we push the schedule back, whether or not they would be as alert in the afternoon, and that perhaps some people said they would be agreeable to it if elementary was going earlier, but not later. And also for our teachers getting out much later at the elementary level, that was also expressed. And some of the things like Deanne hit on, some people did comment, just generally that, focus should be elsewhere. We should follow the survey results. But as Deanne pointed out, the administration has been focused on other things. You hear about this at the meeting because it is one of our agenda topics, but there are other things we're focused on. In addition, the survey was one of the data points that we wanted to gather at that point in time, but it wasn't everything. It wasn't a vote on the issue. It was something we were just gathering at that time. Let's see. All right, that seems to be it for and stress. Parents were concerned about the stress associated with changing the time and having things more rushed in the afternoon. And then we had a couple people that had comments that were just general in nature, not really yes or no, but just questions. There was just a handful of those. And then we did have some people that were in favor of it, less than those that were not in favor of it. But they felt that there'd be some benefits, obviously, to getting more sleep for our students, expressed concern about it being dark in the morning for our high school and middle school students. Again, a lot of parents saying they were in favor of it if we changed the elementary school time to be earlier. A lot of people just encouraging us to follow the science, indicating that more sleep is obviously better. And then we had a number of people that just indicated which option they preferred. It seems like a lot more people were in favor of option 1 over option 2. And that seems to be, and one person did mention that they thought the traffic might actually improve with the change in times. But most people seem to indicate with traffic that it would not improve. So those are the comments. Does anybody feel like I left anything out that you read in the comments? I think this is just as just summary of it.
I think another theme was just the working parents in elementary school and
Yeah.
drop off time for that and how that would affect their job. So, and I think there were several single parents or families who had two working parents that just thought this wasn't going to be possible for them.
Right. Anyone else pick up anything from the comments?
Just being new, I did also read all the feedback and some of the frustration from the community on how this is churned. Just thanks, I guess, for the patience, because obviously, as you said, we want to think about this and make the best decision. So just that's all right. Just a thanks for the patience of the community while we figure this out.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a general comment, I guess, to just wrap up my thoughts on this. So I am very for mental health. I'm very for sleep. I'm personally a little sleep deprived. Also for change, but when we do change, it has to be in a pragmatic manner. And I feel like from what I'm hearing from the comments, what I'm hearing from teachers and students, that it really comes down to disparity. When we talk about the school start times, it is ideal to push it back. However, like when we do, we're just increasing the amount of disparity we have in this school. And I'll be very frank, it was already apparent to me that we have disparities, and now it's just widened even more. Like, and it comes down to privilege. When you don't have a second job, or when you don't have a single parent, you don't think about the fact that, oh, wait, I'll have to, stay longer at my second job, or maybe I have to quit because I have to leave school later. So really, we have to think about, we have a diverse set of students and a diverse set of teachers, and we have to think about life situations. And I feel like right now, it's just not pragmatic to go about voting for this.
Did you have a comment, Stephanie? Or anyone ever hear of any comments? No. So we're gonna, I guess, continue the conversation. We'll have one more meeting before we vote, and then we'll vote in February. But I do appreciate the feedback from our teachers and staff. That's really important for us. And getting all that insight at that meeting was just amazing. Like to really understand how it would impact our teachers and staff. And I know a lot of people refer to the survey, but really these comments and the feedback were so much more valuable, at least to me, because I could really understand like why people were for or against it rather than just, a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So I really appreciate everyone that took time to write to us and provide these comments. And all the presentations we've had as well have been very helpful, Jim. So thank you. All right. Any other comments on this particular topic?
Yeah, Amy, have
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
So Amy, you sort of reminded us that a year ago at this time, we were at a board meeting, and we had previously, I guess, proposed that we were going to take a formal up or down vote on whether or not we would implement later school start times back in January. And I think at the time, the issue we had was that we had a lot of information about the potential benefits of later school start times in terms of sleep, quality of sleep and amount of sleep for our kids, but we didn't have a clear picture of what it would actually mean in terms of implementing it in our district, in terms of the impact on bus schedules, bell schedules, after school sports activities, before and after care, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, those were like kind of just open questions. We had a lot of possibilities, but no specifics. And I think so at the time, that's why we postponed the vote, because we didn't have it. Although we had good information about the benefits, we didn't have much solid information about the costs of change or implementation, right? And so we spent this past year basically trying to flesh that out. To me, it's less about like the benefits, because the science has been out there. It's been pretty clear, I think. But getting more specifics around what it would look like in our district if we put it into practice. And I acknowledged Deanne's comments earlier, that I think there's like a definite sort of way the wind is blowing on this, at least in the community. But I think that as a board, it's important for us to take a definitive up or down vote on whether or not there is majority support for this or not, and then move on. Because this has been floating around as a topic of discussion for several years now. And I wouldn't want to just kind of leave it in limbo. And I think it's important, again, that we call the vote at our next set of meetings and see where things stand. I have a sense of where they stand, but I think it's still important to get on the record where this board is, at least in this point in time.
And keep in mind, so going into our next set of meetings, we do have two options that are on the table. And I think to make it a more clean vote, we should decide which of those two options we are going to put forth for that vote. Jim, if you were told tomorrow we're implementing this, which of the two options do you think is more feasible for a district? Not saying we are doing it, but if we voted tomorrow and said we are, which would be more feasible in your opinion?
We know the options.
The double tiering versus triple tiering bus.
Yeah, so the two options we have, that distilled through the process. And I do want to thank the students throughout the process and families and certainly staff members as well, because you helped us craft these two options, both of which are consistent with the research that says that sleep for adolescents is and in terms of as it relates to school start times is best for 8:30 start time. So that we set that bar, and then we went about looking what the options could be. And as noted, one of the options is keeping us at double tiering busing, which would be starting the middle school and high school at the same time, and then elementary after. And then the second option is to change our busing construct to a triple tiering, which means the middle school would basically stay where they are, and then high school 8:30, and then elementary after that. So those are the two options that distilled. We looked, remember, way back when, at flipping and maybe even starting the elementary early, and the advisory group and lots of feedback said that wasn't going to work here for a variety of reasons. I think the double tiering is good. That option is good of the two because it also lets the adolescents who are in middle school benefit from the sleep research, which is important. I think the triple tiering option is good because it helps at least a subset of our staff, those at middle school, perhaps avoid some of the issues that TJ shared. I also do like the triple tiering. This is a small piece, but I do like the traffic alleviation along Houston. I think it's only going to get worse. I know I see some people who do that every day, know what I'm talking about. I have a very real concern on both about the busing. There's incredible amount of uncertainty right now with staffing and busing. As you know, most of our drivers are not our employees. We are at some degree at the mercy of the contractor for that. The cost of the triple tiering option is more. It's about 50% more. So both options cost more busing wise. Remember, because the double tiering, we have to have some additional runs in the morning. So the double tiering option would cost about $200,000 more every year, and the triple tiering would cost about $300,000 every year. So I think that's a pretty big distinction. I think that we can get at sleep hygiene and helping people understand the value of good sleep habits in many different ways, and so therefore help tackle this real problem that's been corroborated many times about sleep deficit. I would say kids of all ages, including this kid, has a sleep deficit problem, but I don't have to go to school. I also think that we could really benefit from a critical mass of districts in either the region or the state, because then a lot of these issues that were shared and were identified would at least have the edge taken off of them. Not all the ones that, such as what Gavin shared, but some of the ones that have to do with family life. So having said both of those things, I would say the most feasible one for us, because we're facing an incredible amount of uncertainty on the transportation front and the budget front. And remember, we haven't really started the budget conversation for next year. That happens next month. But I can tell you, little spoiler alert, it's a real challenge for us. So that fact alone would keep me at the double tiering option if I were to have to pick one of the two. But again, I have serious concerns given our circumstances about that. But being put on the spot to pick one, if I had to, and it was told it was going to happen for sure tomorrow, I would say that the double tiering is more feasible for us, all things considered.
Any other thoughts on that? Anyone think that we should put forth the triple tiering, or do we have support to put just the double tiering on the?
No, I mean, triple tiering would change the conversation entirely because now we're running buses at 3 different times. And so inherently someone's going to be, I feel like I don't know. Double tiering is fine, but we're having this conversation. And again, I think that we're hearing that, like, I don't want to get angry emails tonight saying, you're going to implement this tomorrow, aren't you? Even though we made it clear that we don't want it. No, I'm sick of the inflammatory and demeaning emails personally. I don't want them anymore. So like, I would vote now because I'm just sort of done with the discussions because I just think it's dead in the water here. I'm sorry. I'm really frustrated with the whole thing at this point because I really, really wanted it and it's just not happening. And I see that. So let's be done with the mean emails. Thanks.
All right, well, we are gonna finish up the process and we'll have the vote when we said it was gonna be. But is everyone okay with me putting just the double tiering on the agenda? Anyone have any strong feelings for triple tiering on the agenda?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Double tiering on the agenda and not the triple tiering when we vote in February.
I guess my initial question is, are we finished with all of the information we're going to receive? Are there any more presentations? Is there any more information that's going to be presented to us before we vote?
As far as presentations, no, but parents and community members didn't think we're voting in February. So I feel like as far as public comments concerned, people may come forth with things before we would vote.
So then the next question is, the vote that we take in February, is it to implement a plan in particular? Or is it, I mean, is it to decide whether we want a double or triple tiering plan or nothing? Or is it, do we want to vote to push back school start times?
We would be voting to push back school start times, but we have to choose a plan to implement. Are we doing a double tier or triple tier busing?
But that's a separate issue, because if we never get to that, then what does it matter? You know what I'm saying? Like, are we giving ourselves, shouldn't we decide whether we want to push it back or not? And if we don't, then that's the end of the debate. I think Deanne is a valid point. If we start saying, well, I think this is the better of the two options, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to say.
But last year, we were at that point. I think if it was just like, well, we want our kids to get more sleep, everyone would vote yes. But you can't make that decision without knowing what the costs are to achieve those benefits. Costs being in terms of, busing, the transportation costs in terms of inconvenience or disruption to people's like schedules.
Right, but we did all that. So the information is now done. So now the question is, are we voting to push back school time or are we not? We're either voting to push it back or we're not. To me, the secondary issue would be only if we voted in favor of it, would we then get to decide, are we doing double tier or triple tier?
But the how, I think, is wrapped up with whether or not you'd be in favor of it.
But we've done that. I mean, I just think, I think Deanne has a really valid point there. I mean, we're beating a dead horse at this point. If we vote to not push back start times, it's the end of the issue. If we vote to push back, because what you're asking us to do now is saying, okay, hypothetically speaking, if enough board members decide we want to push back start times, we were going to choose now to decide which one to vote on.
We could have voted a year ago to whether or not yes or no and let the implementation happen afterwards. Like, we want something clean on the agenda that we're voting on.
So you want to put, and I'm just trying to make sure I understand. We want to put on the agenda that the vote is either going to be no, don't push it back, or push it back to what we decide now as either a double or triple tier.
Yes.
No.
If we vote yes, this is what we're voting on.
I think a better way to think about it is that the action item on the agenda would be approval of pushing back school start times with double tier busing and the other implementation details presented by the administration. And if there's either like 5 yeses or there aren't. If the motion fails, then we're not moving back at all and it's done.
So that sounds like we're taking a vote.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Not tonight.
No, because you want to decide which one we're going to what we're going to do.
Decide the language of the action item that will be presented for vote at our next set of meetings.
So the language of the action item should read just about if we're pushing start school times back or not. End. And then if it would pass, we could hash out those details. But we're having a conversation that doesn't matter at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, because what you're saying is, we're deciding tonight, essentially, to put a vote before the board on whether we're gonna agree or not to a double or triple tiering system. What you're saying is we have two options. We're gonna decide on it tonight, which one, and then vote next month. Are we gonna vote in favor of whatever tier we decide or against it? And to me, it would just seem much more simpler just to say, do we want to push back start times or not? And if we don't, it's the end of the story. I mean, we've debated it. We've researched it. We've done everything we can. I don't know why we need to decide what that is. It's just simply, as a board, do we want to push back start times or don't we want to push back start times? I just think we're getting to that point where everybody is incredibly antsy and unhappy with how this has gone, right or wrong. And we made that commitment because we didn't feel last year that we had done the due diligence that we needed to in order to make that decision. And anybody who argues against that at this point, I apologize. But we wanted to make sure we did it right, because the end goal was to do the right thing. Nobody disputes the science. Everybody believes that children should have more sleep. That nobody has come in, none of our students, none of our families, none of our teachers, nobody's come in and said, this is a bad idea to give kids more sleep. That's not the issue. The issue is, if we were going to do something like this, there are going to be inherent issues and problems associated with it. How do we solve those problems if we're going to be able to do this? And the question is, through this whole process, did we solve those problems? Now, I'm not going to make bones about this. I don't think we have. I don't think we've solved the problem that we were trying to solve, which was to fix whatever issues or problems would arise from this process. So now the question is, if you're going to ask me to say tonight, which of the two I would rather have if I were given that option? Well, my option is not to move it at all, because I believe we've heard all of the information from everybody and all the stakeholders. And so I don't know why we have to vote early. If we have the ability to vote now on something, then why don't we do an up or down on whether we want this to move forward and not delay it a month?
Well, let me ask, so
that's just, I'm just trying to see how we can do this.
there are notice requirements, like we have to put
Yeah,
things on our
and I
agenda.
understand that there are.
Yeah, so we can't, I don't think we can necessarily vote on it. This is the same thing we encountered last year. Things can be taken off the agenda, but I think as Joe pointed out, like, I think at this point, we just need a clear up or down vote.
Yeah.
And I'm fine if we don't want to specify which one. I just thought if we could narrow it down, like, I don't know if anybody on the board is, gonna vote yes, because it's gonna be 2-tier versus triple tier. If that makes a difference to anyone and how they would vote, or like voting and not knowing which option you're voting for. Because last year, I know a lot of us didn't know exactly what we were gonna be voting for. Which is why I kind of wanted to narrow it down so that everybody knew what specifically you were voting yes or no on. But if the board as a whole doesn't want to do that, just wants to vote on the concept of pushing it back, we could do that as well.
Was the purpose of tonight and at the next meeting before we vote for us to debate this issue now that we've heard everything?
Yeah, for us to have a discussion at this point about all the information we've heard and what we want to do.
Because as we know, I mean, we can't debate this behind closed doors.
Right, it also be in public.
So we don't know how everybody's going to vote. I think I just laid my cards on the table. I think based on all of the information we have, I mean, in every conceivable way that we could make this work, there is pushback, not because it's a bad idea, but because we just simply can't solve the problems, whether it is our students who have activities after school or jobs or babysitting or whatever it may be, or when they graduate from this school district and they have to go to a college or a job or the military, and they can't go to their superior or professor and say, I can't do an 8 o'clock because I'm supposed to get more sleep. That's not how the real world is going to work for them. And if we could all do it, I think we would, but we've heard from everybody. I mean, we've heard from our students. A bunch of us went last year and met with students in the high school just to get their sense of what issues were important to them. And the only issue they wanted to talk about was this. And to a T, they all said, we don't like this. They also said, we don't listen. They also said, we don't hear you. You know, the board doesn't listen to everybody. And they said, we know this doesn't mean anything to you, but we don't like it. Well, I did listen. And I listened to every one of those people in that meeting who didn't want it for a variety of reasons. And then you couple that with everybody who's responded, either an email or a survey. The vast majority of people don't want it. You couple that with the fact that it's going to disrupt our school, it's going to disrupt activities, it's going to disrupt traffic. We have estimates on budgets, which are estimates at best, and we don't know how that's going to play out. And I think one of the most important things was when Radnor's representatives came in, they gave a wonderful presentation. And I think the whole point of that presentation was to show they were able to solve certain problems. And they were able to solve that maybe because they're, a half the size of our district, much smaller than ours. They employed their own bus drivers, and they had a different dynamic than we did. Again, the concept is wonderful. We started this process 6-7 years ago. Then we had a pandemic, and we've been going through this to make sure we got it right. Now there's a proposal for a bill in the state Senate to make it a state mandate. Now, if that's the case, we would obviously follow whatever state mandate we have to. And if they implement it, maybe we would then get resources that we would need because they're the ones telling us we have to do X, Y, and Z. So if that's the case, look, we're not going to say we're not going to support whatever the mandate is, but left to our own devices, based on the totality of the circumstances, I don't believe we solve the problems we set out to with this. Not saying we don't want our kids to have them for sleep, but we have to do it in a way that benefits everybody, and I just don't see it. So if we're going to debate that, I'm simply going to lay it out on the table and say, we've done our job. We've looked at it. We've had every angle discussed, and I just don't believe for our district at this point that it's the right decision.
Thank you, Marshall. Other members of the board that would like to comment? Steve? Oh, Rosetta, yeah.
I have to agree with Marshall and Deanne, and I think that the biggest thing in my mind is the feedback that we got. The survey, in my opinion, and this is strictly my opinion, was a little bit of a mistake. And I think that it didn't get us the information that we really needed to solve. But I think the feedback is really clear as to what's going on. And I also agree that, you know, if we vote on a double tier or triple tier is only going to be so confusing if we vote on that tonight. So I would also agree that we either just vote up or down and then decide.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it wouldn't be a vote necessarily tonight. I'm just trying to get a consensus. Ultimately, I can, put on the agenda, just the concept. I can put on the agenda a specific one. I want to get a consensus from the board about what we wanted to see that voting item look like. So that when we put it on, so when Joe and I meet with Jim and Manyanway to do the agenda, we have an idea of what specifically we want to put on that agenda for us to vote on. And if that made a difference for anyone, I would vote yes to triple or no to double. If that made a difference for anyone, then we could certainly single out one or the other. If everyone's saying, they just want to vote on the concept, pushing start times back, and then after that deal with which option, that's fine also.
Yeah, I think that would be the best way to do it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to me, at the end of the day, what's important is that we just take a vote and then move on. I mean, we've been talking about this for years. And we just need to have something definitive of where the board stands. I think I know where the board is likely going to stand, but it's important to get it on the record so we can just move on. How that action item looks, I mean, there was no intent to take any sort of formal vote tonight. I think what Amy was trying to say is that when we get to the next set of meetings, we have to work on the language of the action item that we're voting yes or no to. So it's like, if the language is going to be later school start times with either double or triple, and then it's your yes or no is like, maybe I would have said yes, if it was double, or I would have said no, yes, if it was triple, or there's some confusion, right? So it's just like simplifying what the action item is. If to Amy's point, if the double versus triple doesn't matter, and people just want to vote on the concept of later school start times, given all the evidence we've seen, given all the feedback we've heard, all the emails we've gotten, et cetera, that's fine too. I mean, for me personally, at the end of the day, I just want us to have a clean and definitive up or down vote on later school start times. So after that meeting, we're either doing it or putting it to bed and moving on.
Any further discussion, Paul?
So I don't want to be repetitive, but I do want to just highlight just two or three things as we move on. One, I would be in favor of a definitive vote, just up or down on the concept. I don't think we need to vote specifically on what tier we would choose. That could be a second vote if we got that far. One point that Marshall made that I want to pick up on. Marshall made the point to say that there aren't many discrepancies in terms of whether or not more sleep is important for students. And I do agree that most people, almost all, universally agree with that. The challenge, again, is, as he stated, how do you get there and how do you solve for that problem? As a board, we have a fiduciary responsibility, and as an administration, a fiduciary responsibility to our students to make sure that we're operating in their best interest. And if we have a concept, if we have an idea, if we have new science or whatever it might be that we all can agree is in the best interest of our students, it's all of our job to make sure that we explore it, we vet it, we find out if there are ways that we can have that solution for our students. And we did that. And I just want to commend everyone, the administration, for all the hard work that they put into this, the parents, the families, the students, all who chimed in, the teachers, the faculty, staff, all who chimed in with their opinions, with their thoughts, with their solutions, with their disagreements, with their agreements. All that we heard was very important. All that took time and effort, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate the effort to spend some late nights with us as guest speakers came in, and these meetings went very long, but people stood in and they sat and they listened, both in person and online. And so hopefully there will be other opportunities in the future that will not be as divisive or as challenging to implement as this solution. I do think that Jim just mentioned some very good options that we can consider as a district in terms of quality of sleep, in terms of tools to get students better sleep, and maybe even some ways that we can still do things differently other than school start times if that's the way the vote goes. But I just want to acknowledge again all the effort, time that went into this, which I do think was valid, which was warranted and was important. And whatever way this vote ends up going, I think as a district, we are better off for having gone through this exercise. And I'm glad that we are going to wrap it up. So thank you all.
Thank you, Paul. And I would note the wake up and learn, that is still something, whether we vote yes or no, it's still going to be something that we're putting out there. Like that's the little blurbs on Facebook. Like that's wake up and learn, right? The tips.
Yeah, that's absolutely moving forward with that. It's part of the Health, Wellness, and Safety Committee's work. And as everybody remembers, a wake up and learn is independent of the start time move. It's a very important auxiliary effort.
So whether or not we vote yes or no, we're going to still be getting those sleep tips. Great. Okay. Perfect. Any other discussion on this? If not, we will have one more week of discussion and then we'll vote at our February meeting. All right. So we will move on then. Let's see. Next, superintendent report.
Okay, thank you. Just a very quick recap, more like a status update on the 6 district and board goals we have that were approved previously in the year. They hit on ongoing priority areas that are listed there in the agenda. And I won't read each of the goals specifically, but I do want to give an update on each one. The first is, coincidentally, later school start and end times. This is year 3 of this 3-year goal. And I do agree with the comments that were made with regard to the value of looking at an important topic like this, top to bottom, just to see. There was no harm other than a lot of time spent seeing if it works for us. We're approaching the end of that goal, and as we heard, that'll be on a review item for the work session on the 29th, and then a vote item on the public meeting of the 5th. Goal number 2 was to support the implementation of a district-wide positive behavior interventions and sports, otherwise known as PBIS, framework. And for a status of that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dewan.
Thank you. Yes, we are so excited to implement PBIS district-wide. This year, we're calling it the installation year. So this is a year where we're working on establishing core PBIS teams in all the schools, which we have done, as well as providing training opportunities. We started the process in August with a PBIS training for our administrators. And then this fall, each of the school leaders worked to establish their PBIS core teams. The PBIS teams have participated in 3 of 6 total modules of trainings throughout this year. And that's at the MCIU. The remaining 3 training modules will occur between now and March. And in addition to those training modules at the MCIU, each school's PBIS team has check-in meetings regularly with Ms. Latour, and she's serving as our district level PBIS coach. At those meetings with Ms. Latour, she's able to assist the teams in helping to develop their school plans and helping to find ways to solicit staff and student input in the process of developing plans for their schools, and of course, providing any other needed supports to those school PBIS teams. We're also reestablishing a relationship with ADL's No Place for Hate. When I think about this goal, yes, it is about PBIS, but it's also looking at other elements in terms of anti-bullying, et cetera. So I wanted to mention that No Place for Hate, reestablishing those tenets in each of our schools. We're also continuing to roll out trainings for restorative practices, which is absolutely related to the PBIS work that we're doing. So I want to just give a special shout out and thanks to Ms. Latour for her leadership and coordination as a district PBIS coach. And I also want to shout out our school leaders and our school PBIS teams and our instructional culture restorative practices. Mike Mandel, who's here. Thank you.
Okay, that was goal 2. I can't speak quite that fast. I'm impressed by that summary. Goal number 3 is to conduct a comprehensive review of long-term enrollment projections and how they match up against capacity. And this is a really important one. I can share that we have scheduled a facilities committee meeting for later this month, 22nd, at which time we'll have some updated enrollment projections long-term. This isn't really about how many staff members we need next year for grade 4. This is more about how the capacities of each of our schools can handle this projected number in some number of years in the future. And this process resulted in our expansion of Stony Creek Elementary School and also our ongoing expansion of Bluebell. And we'll take a look at how that matches up with updates from our demographer.
And that's also when we're going to be touring.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, on January 22nd, the board will have a tour of the high schools just to, when we start talking about things, you'll have a visual for those of you who haven't spent a whole lot of time in that building yet.
Hey, Jim, just to clarify that the high school tour is optional and it precedes the actual start time of the meeting.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes, that's exactly right. Goal number 4 is to finalize the transition to using board docs, and we are cooking on that. We have the agendas there, a little bit of a learning curve, a little bit of an issue here and there, but we've got not only meeting agendas, we've got policies, we've got board bios up there, we've got contact information, we've got the questions and answers from board meetings. It's really the place where all of our board related stuff gets stored and shared. And there are still links on our website, but that's not where it's kept. It's just, it gets you over to board docs, which is really a very efficient tool for this kind of thing. District 5 was to fill key staffing vacancies in district leadership positions and then carry out a plan to recruit and hire, retain, and support these key employees. So we've made some progress in this. We have a little more progress to make with regard to a certain business administrator who has announced his retirement, but that search is ongoing. We've found a new director of IT, Jason Falcon, and he's really hit the ground running in a tremendous fashion. We've hired an assistant business administrator. We've hired an assistant IT, director of systems, and we've also hired a curriculum supervisor. So many of those key leadership positions have been filled. And we're working on that one last key one. And goal 6 is conduct a parent guardian awareness and reach out campaign to include a number of topics. And for that goal, I will again pass over to Dr. Dewan.
Thank you. The first thing I want to acknowledge is with our board's Racial Equity Oversight Committee, we are hosting 2 community conversations this year. One has happened already and the other one will be in March. So that's certainly a way that we are engaging with our community and listening and offering insight. Our administrative team is also in the developing stages of planning additional community conversations. These will be what we're referring to as learning and listening. So it'll be an opportunity for families to learn and for us to listen and engage with the community. 2 topics that I know that we're planning for that I'm excited to share. One is going to focus on PBIS and restorative practices. Another is going to focus on supporting students in the LGBTQ+ community. More information is coming once we have those invitations set. We'll push those out once we finalize dates and locations. So that is very exciting. Another thing I wanted to mention is our Student Services Department is reestablishing the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee. I'll talk more about that with my informational item next on the agenda, but I had to note it here. Another item that I'll note here, which I'll be speaking to with my informational item, is the mental health video campaign that we put together to help inform students and families about the resources that are available in the district and how to access those resources. So that's another item that falls under this category. So we'll be excited to continue to share updates throughout the year.
All right, any questions or comments?
I have a quick comment. Do the teachers want to leave? You can go. I mean, you can stay, but I was just giving you an out if you want an out. It is, I know.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Oh, make sure you grab some goodies on the way out. All right, we'll move on now to our Assistant Superintendent report.
Thank you. I have 2 informational items this evening. We know how critically important it is to support the mental health needs of our students, and we want to ensure families are well aware of the resources that are in place in our district. So as I mentioned a moment ago, our Department of Student Services collaborated with our communications department to create a brief video to introduce some of the contracted staff members that we have relationships with from Aldersgate and Child and Family Focus. The video also highlighted the fact that we have now over 35 Wissahickon School District staff members who have been trained as mental health first aid responders to identify signs, symptoms, and risk factors of mental health and substance use challenges. The video is available on our website. I'm not going to show it this evening, but it is available on our website and it's been pushed out to families and students. It was in our December WIS Wellbeing newsletter. So if you want to go back to that, if you didn't catch it, make sure you catch that. There's also a way you can access on our website in the Parent Hub. If you go to the district website, you can go to the Parent Hub and then scroll down to mental health and social emotional support. Of course, you can also reach out to your child's teacher or school counselor. I did bring this little koala because this koala is going to be visible, if not already, on the doors or windows of any space where we have staff members who have been trained to be a mental health first responder. So students walking down the hall can look for the koala to know this is a space I can go to seek support. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
students are being informed of this.
Yes.
They know to look for
Yes,
it.
they saw the video. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So there are staff trained in all of our schools. So K-12. And the koala is going to be available in all of our schools. The outreach with the video campaign was shared with our middle and high school students and all families K-12. Our elementary students, in terms of classroom conversations and morning meetings, they'll be told to look for things, but they are more directed by the adults because of the age that they are. But our middle school and high school students, we really wanted to make sure that they knew what to look for if they needed help urgently. Yeah. Of course, our counselors are amazing and they're there and accessible to our students as well.
Hi, Dr. Dewan, that's great. I'd love to hear that. Who does the training?
We went through an outside agency to get that training provided. It's an actual program, mental health first aid training. It's a very specific training that has tenets that are required. So there were 2 organizations that we were able to have staff trained by. I don't have those organizations on the top of my
It doesn't,
mind,
it doesn't matter. What
but
percentage of the staff do you think are trained?
I know that we have 35 individual staff members who have been trained, and there is an additional training that's going to occur upcoming. I don't know the date, but so we'll have a handful more.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank
And-
you.
Dr. Dewan, are there outcome measures or are there expectations of the program that have been set? I mean, or is it just awareness?
It's more so awareness and having those resources available outside. You know, our counselors are incredible and phenomenal and accessible. And our mental health service providers that we have contracted are fantastic and dynamic and wonderful. And this is a way that we can continue to grow the capacity of students that can access people that have been trained, that can provide immediate, urgent support should they have needs. The targeted group that I know that we started with would include our counselors, our school psychologists, our I know administrators were trained as well as classroom teachers. So in terms of metrics, we don't have a set of metrics that we're looking for other than ensuring that we are continuing to grow the pool of educators who are knowledgeable about and have an awareness of how to support students who might have an urgent pressing need. Thank you for your question.
Sorry, I have one more question. Dr. Dewan, so when they get asked to like intercede for someone who comes in, where do they document that?
Within the schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be tracking information that our school leaders would be monitoring.
Okay.
Certainly, if a student has an urgent need, an urgent matter, and they need to talk to someone urgently, that would be the first step.
Okay.
That would not be the only step.
Okay.
We would then want to ensure that that student has access to ongoing support and resources to support those needs. So this is an awesome opportunity to ensure that we have staff who have an awareness of what to look for and how to be responsive and how to connect them to gain access to more consistent support.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. Stephanie, did you have a question?
No, comment more. I'm so excited for this. I'm a mental health first aid responder myself, and I did it through the Montgomery County Department of Health, and it's a really good program, and I think this is fantastic. And I hope we get even more people to participate, and awareness is key. So hopefully we can get the message out to know that there's a safe place for folks to talk to someone if they need it. And this is definitely a step in the right direction. Thank you for the work.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. John, if we thought about, we've done seminars for the community on things like, technology with your kids, their phone, or about locating drugs in their room. Like, have we thought about putting out some sort of program like this for the community? Like, you often hear after an incident occurs that, family, close friends, like, had no idea if this person was going through anything. Like, to really help members of our community, family members, friends, like really understand and be able to identify these things as well. Maybe not a training where they become certified and get a koala, but where they similar like what Steffi did. Like if we could bring in somebody from Montgomery County to do like a seminar for our families so that more people can recognize. Many of us are like coaches, volunteers, and maybe you notice something outside the school that family members not picking up on. Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll absolutely take that back to our team to see if we could have perhaps a community conversation centered on this topic. I know it was last year or the year before last, we did have a community conversations. It was when we were doing these virtually. And we had a speaker who did speak to what to look for and signs to look for in terms of identifying your child having the need for mental health services. And then in that session, we shared out the resources that were available at that time in our district. There was a small, turnout. But so it's something that we absolutely need to be thinking about. How do we bring that back? How do we expand on that? And how do we get the message out even more broadly to families? So we'll absolutely take that. Thank you. Yeah. All right. I'd also like to mention, Oh, Gavin, sorry.
Yeah, I was just thinking this is a really good idea. I think having connections with the clubs in the high school as well, like NAMI and SAD, I think they're both mental health clubs that combined. Getting them to get that word out would be really, really helpful. As well as, extending it to the mental health teachers.
That's an excellent idea. Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you. Anything else on that topic?
I would just thank our staff who went through that training, and are willing to do that and be there and available for our students. That's amazing. So thank you to them.
Absolutely. Some of whom are and were in the room. Yes, yes. Thank you to our staff. I'd also like to mention that our Student Services Department is relaunching, as I mentioned a moment ago, the District Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, or CPAC, is the acronym. A survey was sent out to families, to parents and guardians of students with IEPs, GIEPs, and/or 504 plans to glean interest and collect input on topics. We got an overwhelming response, which was wonderful to see, and reaffirmed the need to reinstate this committee. So on December 6th, the Department of Student Services held the first planning session with a group of parents and guardians who expressed interest in serving in leadership roles to help co-plan and co-facilitate. The next planning team meeting is going to be held on January 16th. During that meeting, the team will work on developing plans for a parent workshop to be held sometime in February or March for all to attend, and that'll be open to all. Special thanks to Dr. Hy McCluskey, Ms. Jacovino, and Ms. Lobsher. Ms. Lobsher is taking the lead on this effort, so she's the point person. So if you have any questions or suggestions and you want to reach out, you can reach out to Ms. Lobsher, and her email address is slaubscher@wsdweb.org. I know that's been a question in the past, like, how do we reach out? So I want to make sure to share that. And so there are no action items this evening, so this concludes my report.
Dr. Dewan, one thing that I discussed with you before that I would love to see addressed as part of this is how we can really build like a community feeling within our special education. That was a concern brought to my attention at an HSA meeting, is that there isn't that sense of community like you have in the general ed classrooms, where you have a room parent, you have everybody's email addresses, you can communicate, get in touch with other parents, and that there wasn't that sense of community in special education classrooms. So whatever we can do to try to address that, and I realize there are reasons we can't share out information, but whatever we can do to try to build that community feeling. Thank you for that.
Will there be a web page dedicated to this group that parents can access, or that they can reach out to people that they want to talk to about this or have questions about it?
We have talked about that. We're in the very early planning stages.
I know, it just happened.
But we do want to make sure that families know who they can access and where to get that information. I would foresee there being a landing page on our website, most likely in the Department of Student Services, where that information will be accessible and families can know who to contact. So it's a great question. We don't have it fleshed out right now, but that'll likely be something we get in the works. Probably even at the January 16th session, we'll work through some of those details. Thank you. We're very excited about reestablishing it. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Any other comments or questions before we move on? All right, seeing none, we'll now move on to our board solicitor report. Michelle?
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. We have two settlement agreements between families and students in the district, which I understand were reviewed during the work session. So I am looking for a motion to approve action items 10.1 and 10.2.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Board Secretary report, Wade.
Yes, thank you very much. We're requesting approval of action items 11.1 through 3, which are the December 4th annual reorganization and work session meeting minutes, the December 11th audit committee meeting minutes, and the December 11th regular public meeting minutes.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Board Treasurer report.
Thank you. We're requesting approval tonight of action item 12.1, which is the treasurer's report for November 30th, 2023.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Danielle?
Good evening. Tonight I'll be seeking approval for 4 items under the HR agenda. These include resignations, appointments, changes of status, leaves of absence, extracurricular appointments, and volunteer additions you'll find in 13.1 and 13.2. 13.3 is a agreement for a new time clock system through Power School. This is a necessary change as our current system's time clocks are going obsolete. So the time clocks on the walls are going obsolete. So we had to make some decisions about moving forward. So although the number is in excess of 30,000, the annual increase for this service next year will approximately be about $3,300 more than what we're currently paying for our current time clock system through Kronos. Additionally, there's some additional costs for implementation and training. These costs would be equal to replacing those clocks if we had to do so, which we don't plan on doing. So the department is very excited about this product. We're really looking forward to increased functionality and efficiencies, and definitely a better end user experience for sure. So item 13.4 is a separation and release agreement for your consideration as well, as discussed in executive session. This evening, I'm seeking approval for action items 13.1 through 13.4. Thanks.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? My only comment would be, do we really still have time clocks? Like,
No, we
real
do,
time?
like they swipe their badges right now.
For
Oh,
everybody?
Is that all?
No, it's mostly support staff.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right, any other comments?
All right, is that legally required?
It's legally required by the Department of Labor to track time. It's not legally required that they swipe a badge or stand at a time clock. So there's multiple ways you can do that. They can document on a piece of paper. We can use an electronic system like we're using. You could use a time clock. There's multiple ways to do that. We're just required for hourly employees to document their time and have it, accessible.
And is the system Chrono?
The system that we are moving away from is Kronos. The new system is through Power School. It's called Time Clock Plus.
Are there any safety benefits in terms of security for the new system versus what we were using?
Security as in?
Being able to monitor who is coming in and out of the building, how they get access?
So we have a badge system that that's separate from our time clock system. So our badges let us know who is in and out of our buildings. Same with our Raptor system. So there's other ways that we provide security. This is for us to make sure that, our staff are working the hours that they're supposed to be working. And again, for us to meet our requirements for the state to track time.
Any other comments? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Danielle. All right, we'll move on now to our Communications Committee report. Zephyr?
There are no informational or action items this week.
Great, thank you. And Curriculum and Technology, new chair, right, Dan?
Okay, well, I'm going to defer to Dr. Dewan on this one.
Thank you. This evening, we have 2 action items that we'll be seeking a motion to approve. The first is approval of extended field trips for the winter and spring for clubs and activities and athletic teams. The second is approval for the configuration and installation services in the amount listed in the agenda. And this is to work through our core network switch here in the central office. You might recall this was on the board agenda for approval in March, and we purchased it in May. So this is now to install the work. So we're seeking a motion to approve action items 15.1 and 15.2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Facilities and Transportation, Joe?
No, nothing to report tonight. Thanks.
All right, our new Finance Chair, Finance Committee report?
So we're looking for approval of the finance reports for November.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any comments or questions? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Policy Committee report. Marshall?
Thank you. I have no informational or action items this evening.
Great, thank you. Racial Equity Oversight Committee, Paul?
Thank you, Amy. No action items or informational items this evening. Just a reminder that the next meeting will be held January 16th at 7 p.m. It is virtual and all are welcome to attend.
Thank you. All right, Health, Wellness, and Safety. Rosetta?
And we do have a meeting also on January 16th at 6 p.m. and it's virtual and all are welcome to attend.
All right, thank you. All right, Extracurricular Committee, Marshall?
There's nothing new to report tonight. However, we do have a meeting later this week, so I'm sure I will have some news at the next meeting.
All right, thank you. And we have not had NCIU meetings since our last meeting, so I have nothing to report. North Monco. Steve Zeppi?
Did we report about
No.
our wonderful holiday dinner that we
How was the
attended?
food? Was it
It
good?
was great, as it usually is, prepared by the North Montco culinary students, which is always so much fun. Steve and I attended. And then we had a meeting right afterwards. And it was just regular agenda items. And they did announce that the current, what's her name?
Director.
The current director, what's her name? Her name?
Gina
Somebody help
Portovich.
me.
Gina Portovich.
Yes, Gina is retiring, which is really, really sad. She's such a great lady, but good for her. She's done her time. So we will start the discussion as to how we're going to proceed as to how we will replace her. And those discussions will start as of, I think we have a meeting in 2 weeks.
Virtual meeting.
We have a virtual meeting in 2 weeks. One of the coolest things I thought about the holiday dinner is they also have like little prizes that you could win, and they're all made by the staff. And one of the students, excuse me, one of the most beautiful things I saw was they had from the carpentry students, they had designed these like trees, like Christmas trees made out of wood. And one of them would like, you could collapse it and it would become flat, and then you could bring it up and it was like 3-dimensional. And these were like their extracurricular projects or like extra credit projects. They like did the research on YouTube and found like these cool projects and brought them forward. It wasn't like assigned to them. So it was really nice to see that, all the great work these students, get to do. Nothing more to report, right, Steve?
Correct.
Do they have any sort of like school store where you can go and buy the stuff to like have money go towards like activities they do or anything?
So they don't have a school, a store, but you could go have breakfast and lunch
They have
there.
a restaurant.
And you could go get your hair and your nails done. Like you could go and like, oh, and you can also, and this is what we should do for our next campaign, like you can actually contract with them for marketing, printing, and all of those things.
All right, well, thank you so much for the report. And where can you find out like about like their salon? Like that would be great to like have people go, like I get my hair done by a Wissahickon graduate. But I think it'd be great like to share that out, like where people could go to.
We will get that information and send it out to you. And the other thing they promised to send and they didn't send out was the PDF version of their course curriculum. Now, the book, we got it in paper format. It's pretty interesting what they offer. I was like pretty impressed, and I don't know if everybody really fully appreciates the breadth of courses that you can actually have our students participate in.
Yeah, that would be great to know more about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Joe, I believe mechanics.
Oh.
And engines, other mechanical.
All right.
Good to know.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you so much for that report. PSBA liaison?
All right, there were a couple of scholarships available through PSBA. I forwarded them along to Dr. Crisfield, who was gonna forward them to Dr. Haney. But I'm looking at you two maybe. Did you get that information? Amazing, great. There's new board member training available through PSBA. Have you guys received all that, right? So yeah, any questions, you can let me know. I'll try to help. And that's all for that. Employees Relations Committee, I'll just take that. We have an upcoming meeting, I think in about 2 weeks or so. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you for those two reports. Any comments or questions on either of those? All right, then we will move on to our second public comment period, where you can comment on any topic school related. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. Note again, that's not our practice to engage in dialogue with speakers, and when appropriate, we will follow up with responses on our board docs. And again, I'll remind you that you have 3 minutes, and we didn't hear the buzzer earlier, but the buzzer is there. Okay. All right, Donald?
Yes.
Great.
I guess to follow proper protocol, I want to seek approval of an action, what do you call it? Action item. I'm the boys track coach at Wissahickon High School. I've been there. First of all, I'm a graduate of the high school in 1973. At that time, Coach Floyd Garris was the head boys track coach. There's only been 3 coaches in the track team in the history of the school. Floyd was the first one, came on board in 1963. In that 20-year span, when he retired in 86 due to some family health problems, he led us to 4 state titles, 5 district championships. He's coached over 17 PIAA state champions and over 37 state medalists in track and field. He is now 92 years old. He is still my assistant coach. This year, he's not doing it simply because he lost his driver's license. He is basically a legend in this community. And what I would like to do is have a stadium dedicated to him before he passes on. And that's what I'm here for. I don't know the process. I don't know how we go about doing something like this, but plaque underneath the scoreboard, it's Floyd Garris track and field. I'd like to read just a little synopsis here. This is what I wrote on the Wissahickon Athletics website under the coaches description. And if you excuse me for a second, I don't have the right glasses on, but anyway. Coach Garris was the first coach at the new Wissahickon High School in 1963. During his tenure as head coach, Wissahickon has been the PIAA state champion 4 times as a team. 1968 Class B, which is now AA, 72 Class A, which is now AAA. I was on that team. Won it again in 1982 and indoors in 82. His teams have won the District 1 title 5 times. Let's see, along with the team title, 17 individual PIAA champions and 35 state medalists. He was named the National High School Sports Coach Hall of Fame in 1982, inducted into the Pennsylvania Track and Field Hall of Fame in 2007. He and Larry Wilson, Otto Walpert, and Leon Hill founded the Amarillo Olympic Club in 1967, which today boasts over 200 athletes each summer. One more thing I thought about while I was sitting there, that dome was his idea. He recruited a bunch of people from the school board, took a trip down to Virginia and said, we're not going to do another square gym. We got an idea for a dome. It's got a track inside it. Come on down, take a look. That was his baby there. Now, the only way he fell a little bit short there was that he wanted an extra 30 meters on each straightaway to make it a 200-meter track. To save a couple of bucks, they shrank it. So as a result, we can't have meets in there. But he almost had it pulled off. This guy's a legend in communities. He's influenced thousands of people. And I just thought it was my job to come in here and see if we could probably, make an attempt to push this through. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much. And Wade, can you connect with Donald on that? Thank you. Is there anyone online, Katie? All right, then we will move on to board comments. First, I should have said at the beginning of the meeting, but I wanted to welcome Gene. He didn't have like the formal swearing in here in the boardroom, but he's here with us tonight, so welcome. First board meeting, so great job tonight. Any other board comments this evening? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I just want to acknowledge Coach Betterly. I had the privilege of running track when Coach Betterly was here. It's,
Just seeing when I first started here.
I was here Coach Betterly's first year and as well as Coach Garris, obviously coached me my entire career here at Wissahickon. And I ran indoor track in the new gym. So I was part of that whole program as well. But Wissahickon has a phenomenal track program that's nationally recognized for high school track and field. It was that way before I got there. It was that way while I was there, I'm happy to say, and continued on after me. So I think he did a great job of explaining all the accolades that Coach Garris has received, but I don't know what the process is. Maybe we could I'll actually send an email. Maybe I'd like to better understand it. If that's been done before in terms of naming or dedicating some of our facilities to our coaches, but.
I like the idea. Thank you for sharing. And yes, we're on it.
Okay, great. So anyway, thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, I walk around, I do see a lot of the stadiums, I think the Jack Armstrong Stadium, Abington, Henry's, which is retired, and he is. Stadium up there for them, they do that all over the place, so. Yeah, he's still in good health. Oh, yeah, as a matter of fact, Larry Wilson, one of the founders, just had his funeral the other day, and I took over to that. We actually joke about the Lehigh, every building has a name to it. It's always a joke. Do you want to be the storage facility? Do you want to be the men's locker room, the weight room, Willie Garris tool shed? Every building's named after something.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, then I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. The Michigan game.